This may be video 2, I might scrap it. Here we go. In a previous video, I ended it, not as a cliffhanger, but because I ran out of time. Stitching together 4 or 5 franchises, series, serials, sequences from various artists. I didn't cover Cloud Atlas. I didn't cover any of the other really cool things. I didn't cover Twilight Zone, even though that's a similar one. What I'm talking about here, if anybody's curious, is the effect of people trying to solve a problem or understand something and doing it by expressing pieces of it through a series of actions or whatever as an artistic thing. A series of paintings done by Van Gogh. Musical pieces done by a specific artist who's trying to create a series of them. Trent Reznor comes to mind immediately. Where he's essentially working out something he doesn't even know what it is. There's a subconscious splinter in the mind that won't go away. The movie The Matrix was about trying to find out why you're doing something and what you're trying to solve, and knowing that it's something that may just be outside of yourself. Like maybe there's a god or a demon messing with you, or maybe there's some higher purpose. The Morpheus character is the bringer of dreams, that sort of thing. All of these stories and series, in some cases, are about something everybody has going on in them. Some people watching this, if anybody's actually giving a damn, might be aware of the fact that I have had incidents in my life that have rendered me incapable of seeing or hearing or whatever. I've lost most of my senses and gained them back temporarily. But the process of this has caused me to become acutely aware of what it means to have something and then lose it and use something else to take over for it, like using my hearing instead of my vision and vice versa. But also that we instinctively, on an animal level, do certain things, and if you're aware of them, the quote you get is, you'd be insane because you'd be aware of what's going on in your head. No, you won't, and I lived with that for a period of time. I could actually understand what my brain was doing. That slowdown you get when you fall down and the world seems to slow down, and it's actually used as a reference in several movies, one of them being an AJ video, a movie, where they're talking about a fantastical ability to fire weapons over long distances. I forgot the name of it. I'll look it up and put it below. I literally forgot the name of it. Curving a bullet. The Loom of Fate, that sort of thing. If you've actually seen the movie, you know which one I'm talking about. I just forgot the name already. The point is that in that movie, people force their mind to run faster so they can slow down things. Many people, most people I know, have experienced that. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because on an animal level, at that moment, if you paid attention, you realize your perception of time is variable. If you want to, a simple experiment, if you've never done it, it only works if you've never done it before, is to teach yourself to juggle. Specifically, learn how to juggle a baton. Just baton twirling. It's not really baton twirling. It's learning how to use a sword. But anyway, you can learn these things. And as you're learning them, your mind will very quickly, temporarily, speed up, and you'll see things move in slow motion and realize, I just did that. And at that point, for me, it became about not learning how to correctly throw a dart and know exactly where it was going to hit. It was to slow time down. You can make your mind run faster. And yeah, if you do it enough, you'll burn your brain out and you'll have convulsions. Don't do that. But you become aware of something even more unpleasant and terrifying. Your brain is running at an insanely high speed and not telling you about it. Sometimes called the buffer function in computers. In a computer, and I'm going to cover this, A computer that has to deal with real-world events has to oversample sound like this is being recorded or video. If I move my hand in front, it has to process more information. But if I hold still, it only has to process this part of my mouth. Now, why is that? Why is this important? There's a 3-to-1 rule. If something can happen in 1 second, you have to process it 3 times a second so you don't miss something that may be significant. You only have to catch the ending and beginning and something in the middle. This is called tweening. In-betweening. Tweening. Tweening can be real or faked. See also how animations are done, and that's exactly how you do it. If I start from here to I can just progressively make it look right. But the way you do it is you create an image here, or here just with my face like this, and then if I'm going to end up here, you don't create the interframes that look like this with the eyes. You create this frame, and then you cut between them halfways. Chopping things in halfways, which is the arrow paradox, by the way. If you want to look that up, I'll include it below. I think it's called the arrow paradox. You end up making a much more realistic fake reality. The individual chopping points become not individual. They're halfway, and then halfway between, and then halfway between, dividing by 2 each time. That's called binary progression, in case you're curious. Is this a hint that the universe is the Matrix? No. The Schrodinger's answer to whether or not you're in a simulation, I'll give you the answer right now at the 6 and 7 minute mark here, is all of the evidence that exists now about quantum mechanics says factually you are definitely in a simulation and you're definitely not in a simulation. It is literally 50-50. Binary. You end up, because we don't have a false dichotomy here, we have assumption that there's only 2 possible answers. You're either in or you're not in some sort of fake reality. Neither of those answers is correct. Again, the human brain runs a buffering system that oversamples everything at an insanely high speed. Your eyes take in things in parallel, but it pre-processes things to find straight lines or curves or shades. It makes generalizations, things that people subconsciously understand to the point that it's part of how the theory of how vision works, but it's also the theory of how you make a painting. We have, for millennia, been experimenting with trying to understand our own minds by making paintings and drawings. Next. That's also how you do video processing, because that's the only way to do a 2-dimensional matrix processing, by compressing it. Making something take up less space so it doesn't take more to process it. One of the hypotheses that is used to explain why you couldn't possibly be in some sort of simulation is that all of this would take up too much processor time. There's too much data. To emulate one atom takes more information than an atom does. It would be simpler just to make it really exist. That's an interesting point. The trouble is, now that we understand how compression works and how our vision and perception works, the amount of information you're seeing on my face is virtually non-existent. It's a tiny amount of information by compression standards, and also by realism standards. There's an image you can look at, several of them. It's a familiar image. Oh, excuse me. And it's blotchy. It's extremely blocky looking. It looks like some sort of Cubist art piece. But if you look at it, you immediately recognize that it's Abraham Lincoln, or it should be. It could be anything. It could be somebody dressed up as him. But it's Abraham Lincoln. In fact, it's so familiar, if you've seen that specific photo or specific image of Abraham Lincoln, that you realize that if it was modified a little bit, you would actually know that it's not the correct image. It's somebody else's image. Because we don't need that much information. And some people who are shown it, their mind will create the image and put the details in where they're missing, because that's what your brain already does at high speed. We fill in blanks. This is how you get optical illusions. Is this a simulation or is this real? That's a false dichotomy. Are we in a potential simulation simply because our brain is continually oversampling things, analyzing them, and then handing us the cooked rather than raw feed of information? We are limited by the fact that our brain, on an insanely high-speed range of functions, sort of like the coprocessor or the video processor in your computer, doing all that work to make the video game look nice, so you don't have to have it do ones and zeros adding together and futz with things. It just does everything in a batch of activity. Our brains are designed on an organic level to make it to where we are experiencing everything somewhat slowed down, compacted, and kind of controlled a bit, so that we don't have to process so much information, because we, as conscious beings, can't. Having experienced a world where my visual cortex was damaged, and it healed over time, I can tell you that having to see the noise of what's really entering your eyes, and not have it fixed, processed, or just compressed a little bit so that it's easier to process, is an insanely overwhelming experience. An interesting thing happened today. It's part of the inspiration for me to doing this. I wasn't consciously aware of why I was doing this. One of the lenses in my glasses had to be changed because it had the wrong focal length, and it has had the effect of causing one of my eyes to wander even more than normal. I'm wall-eyed, as it's called, or bug-eyed, which meant that the right eye had not been processing much. When I put it in, I can see stars. I can look at a building that's a mile away and actually tell you whether or not there's a person standing in the window and whether they're facing outward. I could probably even identify individuals maybe if I pushed it. The point is that change in perception caused me to experience a day that had much more three-dimensional depth than I'm used to, reminding me of this subconsciously, maybe making me need to do this video and the previous one. And from that I realized that my brain still processes this information sledgehammer style. I'm just aware of it and I don't like it because I don't want to be. When I put on my glasses with the lens correctly focused, because my eye had changed focal length because it had gotten more nearsighted over time, I was overwhelmed by depth, by the sensation of how far things are, like looking over a cliff. It was thrilling and terrifying. And my right eye was now being made to process information that was distracting me. And I took off my glasses and went back to what I was doing. Riding my bike, on the other hand, it's mandatory I do this because of a peculiarity. When I look to the left, my hoodie, covers up this eye. So I have to use my right eye. And I wasn't able to see anything a couple of times in the last 2 days. And I had to change the lens because now it's a safety issue. And now it's become an inspiration to do a couple of videos. Because this eye, tied to this side of my brain, wasn't filtering anymore. My brain had gotten lazy and I was seeing the raw feed. This sounds crazy, but many people who've had head injuries can tell you about that, when they gain an ability back or have the nerve endings in their arms or legs heal, or their spinal column. They become overwhelmed with reality. Now, are you experiencing the real world? Is it a simulation, or is it cooked for bite-sized digestion versus bit, nibble, or an entire hard drive worth? Bite for bite's a little easier. Takes longer. Are you really experiencing it? And like Dark Matter 2525, I'm not answering questions. I'm presenting the questions in a certain way so that we can think about them maybe a different way. I'll be doing other videos on this subject, but I had to do this, and I didn't know why, and now I do. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that, and I hope that this has been helpful to someone out there watching. And I'm sorry I'm so late.